Yeah, okay. So welcome everyone again. We are also recording the meeting as you had heard right now. So if you do want to revisit this recording or share it with folks who were not able to attend, we will be sharing this with everybody who actually registered for today's Zoom meeting. And so we're actually going to get started now that you kind of shared or are still in the process of building entrepreneurship awareness for folks in your campus or community. We do actually want to hear, we know that entrepreneurship is not the most well-known topic at this point, and there could still be a lot of questions that come up on how do you actually or how do you better share or introduce entrepreneurship to your undocumented students? So we're actually going to be doing this Menti meter check-in right now. And if you have not seen this before, the way it works is you go to menti.com, either on your phone or on a separate browser, and then you put on this code that's on the screen that Nancy also put on the chat, 17152699, and then you should be able to answer and share what are some of the challenges that you or your campus has faced when introducing or sharing about entrepreneurship to your undocumented students. So we'll take about a minute to do that, and then we'll look at some of the results. If you're having trouble, let me actually click through to there. I think that will actually help you answer it. So we can see, hopefully, the answers as they come on. If you're having trouble, let us know in the chat. Oh, why did it do this? Okay, did they change? Let me just see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry, I feel like they changed their software a little bit. Okay, but I see some answers coming in. I think more are coming on right now. Right, okay, so I see this really great one about ability to shift mindset from seeking employment to seeking opportunities to be self-employed or entrepreneurs. There's some folks who are saying that they're still starting, right? We are new to exploring this, not familiar with the process. Yeah, and then there's some things around around like lack of self-knowledge on subject, feeling incompetence. How do I tell students to start a business who have no capital seed money, making it about students rather than the system? How to empower students, right? Getting people to believe that they can. I don't know anything about the topic and I feel pressured to be an expert. Blank stare. They don't know what to do, what to major in to start a business. How can I support them to begin to think about themselves and their future as business folks as a way for a livelihood when their parents work as laborers? I also see a couple of like more logistical things, including helping students with obtaining their ITIN in that process. I think there was something up here about funding and guidance on how to start their business, funding and guidance on the licensing process, difficulty around imagining what it looks like for different majors, careers, interests, students being afraid to show off their strengths, identify skills gained through their experiences and interests. Mixed emotions. I usually get confusion and sadness because they wish they could continue the paths their documented peers are in. They also get excited about the opportunity. Oh, this one is a good one also to see. Not knowing examples of undocumented. And then specific opportunities for students in the arts, such as film, animation, and illustration, and learning to empower students and make myself more knowledgeable on the subject. Great. You can feel free to keep putting your answers if you have not finished, but I'm wondering if I can hear from 2 to 3 folks on just something that they put on here or something that they're seeing on the screen that they're resonating with. And I'll do a slow scroll again, so you could just kind of like skim through some of the responses. But feel free to just unmute or raise your hand or put it in the chat.
I can go. This is Miriam from Herniel College. Sorry, my screen is not on. We are on Wi-Fi and hotspots, so if I turn on my screen, my Zoom will go off.
Okay,
I put in there the ability to shift the mindset from being an employee to seeking opportunities. And I put that on there, because some of our students are aware of what it means, but I think it's difficult to break that cycle of being employed by someone. And I think that that is what they have been taught to think that is an opportunity. So it's difficult for us to explain to them what entrepreneurship is and for them to embrace that concept. I have situations where I talk to students about entrepreneurship, and it's difficult for them to even put this on the table and continue talking about it. So then we'll have follow-up meetings, but they don't want to address the subject.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, employment is, I think, always what we have known, right? What I think my parents also have been employed, even as undocumented folks in this country. And so it's really hard to like learn more about the entrepreneurship part because it feels so different than employment. Yeah, thank you, Miriam, for sharing that. Anybody else or resonate with what's coming up for Miriam? Julissa, I see your hands up.
I put at the bottom where it says they usually feel confusion and sadness because they wish that they could continue the path that their documented peers are in, especially if they are a 1.5 generation, aka they weren't born here, but they grew up here. The narrative that they hear all the time is work hard, go to college, find a job, and then get a high-paying job. And with their peers, they always hear that, oh, what are you going to be? I'm going to be an engineer, so I could work for an engineering industry and be making 100K or up. So they always hear that narrative. Unfortunately, when they do realize that because they are undocumented, it's going to have its own difficulties with that pathways. And I do introduce that entrepreneurship in the resources that Immigrant Rising has. They do get a little sad, they do get a little confused. Sometimes they do get excited saying, oh, okay, so there's a different path that I could take. But I will say around 70% of the time they get confused and sad because that new pathway wasn't introduced to them at a younger age. So now they have to restructure the way they're thinking about their future.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Julissa, for sharing that too. I do hope we can, I think we'll touch a little bit more on this later too, right? How do we make that entrepreneurship pathway not seem like the default pathway, but more like another pathway, right? Something to feel excited and empowered about too, in the same way that some of your students feel about it. I'll go next to Diane.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm having also video issues. So, I work with students in choosing their major, and so the connection between having a major in college and being in college and then having a business, owning a business. How can I support them to either do some part-time jobs that would lead towards that change of mindset or any internships, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And then I see this really good point also. I thank you for bringing that up in that point also. And I see this really good point from Angelica on the chat about making entrepreneurship also more relatable is a great practice. And sometimes students are more familiar with hustling, have students identify people in their communities who hustle. So how do we help them demystify that? I know our lesson plan's gonna talk a little bit about that. So I'll also just have us go to Arlen to share their thoughts.
Thank you. So we have two thoughts, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So for something that I've noticed is that because oftentimes the students won't know anyone that has gone that path, it's really hard for them to also see themselves doing that. So having them really have to think of how they can think outside of the box, right? Instead of some of you all mentioned already, thinking about employment or going that avenue. So it's hard for them sometimes to imagine what that would look like for themselves, especially with certain majors. And then I put the point right here on the right side that says students being afraid to show off their strengths. I think, a lot of our students spend a lot of their times protecting themselves and protecting their families. So how do we encourage them to embrace their strengths and identify them? And then also being able to identify the strengths that haven't come from like a work background. Like your experiences, your hobbies, your interests, those have contributed to skills that could like help you kickstart a business or help you be an entrepreneur. But a lot of the times the students like, oh, I couldn't be an entrepreneur. I didn't do anything. So it's helping them identify the like golden nuggets in their experiences.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think we're going to be touching more on that a little bit later, right? But how do we help students also believe that that they can also be entrepreneurs or are already entrepreneurs? Some of them, I think. And I think it's part of it, right, is how to demystify this a little bit for students. So it's not like a big scary concept, but something that seems attainable to them. Great. Thank you all for these challenges that you shared. We'll also be sharing this Mentimeter, right, when we share the materials. And so I think it's also just a good way to see that like the challenges you're facing around entrepreneurship and elevating entrepreneurship on your campus, you're not facing that alone. And so that's why we're starting with this space to kind of help address some of these, and how does our lesson plan help address some of these. So I'm going to transition us back to our presentation, and then let me just get all of this up again. And then I'm actually gonna transition over to Denea to kind of just give like some, like why is it so important that we're doing this kind of work, and maybe helping address some of the points that has come up as challenges for people.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and thank you to everybody who went ahead and shared their journeys in educating their student population. So my name is Denea Joseph. I'm the Entrepreneurship Support Specialist Lead over at Immigrants Rising. And for me, this is personal, right? That's why it's important, because I'm directly impacted by it. I am one of the approximate 619,000 Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals recipients. And not just that, I attended UCLA in a pre-DACA, pre-California DREAM Act world, right? And the idea of this lesson plan is for us to really be able to make preparations beyond DACA. But it's not just about beyond DACA. As you all, as educators know, there is a host of undocumented students who never had DACA to begin with, never had TPS, never had the ability to have work authorization in this country. And so really this lesson plan is an introduction, right? It's about really planting a seed in your student population, allowing them to be empowered in self, to realize that entrepreneurship, much like you all mentioned earlier, is not a dream deferred, right? It's an option for us to be able to thrive, not simply survive. And so if we can move to the next slide, Madeline. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is my origin story into entrepreneurship, because I think it's important that we get rooted in understanding how folks come to the work that they come to. And hopefully this could provide a little bit of perspective as to what your students might be encountering. So for me, my entrepreneurial endeavor, whether or not I saw it at that time, was because I was in high school. As you know, junior year gets a little bit expensive. Senior year even gets much more expensive. And so what I started to do was sell chips. And at the time, I didn't see it as entrepreneurial. I just looked at it as an opportunity to get the coins that I needed to be able to pay for grad night and all of those other things. And I think that speaks to a lot of the entrepreneurial journeys of undocumented people in this country. I love that. Areli said that they did the exact same thing, right? Because chips were lucrative, honey. You would take that $13 box that you would get from Smart and Final and flip that to be $1 each. Come on, coins. Yes, Areli understands. And so a lot of times this happens with members of our community where we've done things like that. I've been fortunate to be invited by many of you all to your schools, to your universities. And one of the things that I often share, chips, exactly, chips, like actual chips in a box in their individual packets. And so a lot of times I've heard students share with me that they too, right, used to sell elote and helado flow and everything else. And a lot of times we're too busy in survival mode to really look at what we do as entrepreneurial. Right? Because we're so busy trying to survive. We're not looking at it as an opportunity to thrive. We're simply looking at it as a means to an end to be able to sustain both ourselves and our family. But this is about Beyond Doc and really making the preparations no matter what the outcome of the Texas decision might be. And then really, we need to start to look at UndocuHustle as a way of life. I think someone said this earlier, and I echo a lot of your sentiments, which is that when you tell students this, at first, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that they're going to be disappointed. Right? They're going to be extremely disappointed by the notion of not being able to do what their documented counterparts are able to do. But it's about flipping a switch, right? And allowing them to see that really, with the exception of a few professions, like being a doctor, perhaps, that anything can be entrepreneurial, right? And you're going from that employee mentality to being the person who's self-employed or the person who's employing other people. I think Jose Antonio Vargas always talks about the fact that he's undocumented and employing Americans, right? So it's just about switching our mindset to understand that UndocuHustle, like Iliana said, is not just a tactic for survival, that there's people who are thriving. CNBC did a whole series on a friend of mine who is out of Denver, Colorado, and, you know, started by selling buttons and now has a cafe, right? Look it up. There's incredible undocumented folks who are thriving. And in the next slide, these are just a few tips, right? These are just a few things that I would tell you moving forward, that it's about really just planting the seed. And I say this because what students need, especially as someone who navigated it in a pre-California Dream Act world, in a pre-DACA world where there were no resources. I commuted back and forth between Westwood and South Central for 4 hours every day via bus. So no one understands it maybe in the way that I do, that the opportunities that we have now are often opportunities that folks did not have and our undocumented elders might never have had. And so planting that seed to just be there for your students. I remember some of my fondest memories at USP was having people like Angela Chen, having people like Valeria and Kike, who were a resource, who just provided a listening ear to be a soundboard for any, you know, questions or concerns that I had. And simply being there for your students, I know a lot of the concerns that kept on popping up was about you all not feeling like you're educated enough on the subject. And it's not about being the most educated, right? It's about just making sure that your students feel supported and knowing that you're a part of a network. Look at how many people are a part of this space. 42 people. You are a part of a larger network of individuals who are there to support you. And beyond that, you don't have to be the experts. We're getting paid to do this work. So, you know, look at the resource that you have in IR, in this lesson plan that's going to be presented to you by Professora Iliana, and let that be your guide. And then really knowing that community exists within this space, within your campus community, and then allow yourselves to be confident enough in your students. For me, as someone who is undocumented and Black, I didn't begin to speak out until I knew that there was a community of people who were ready and willing to support me. And not just that, until I knew that there was a space for me to, you know, be open about my opinions and to be able to advocate not just for self, but for community. And so really, there's a lot of resources at your disposal. And while this is just an introduction of a lesson plan that introduces you to entrepreneurship, we have an abundance of additional resources that are on the Immigrants Rising site that can answer any of the questions or concerns that might come up. So being there for your students and doing it in a way that they don't feel like they have to do the emotional and very laborious work of explaining to you speaks volumes. And sometimes it's simple. I remember the times when Angela Chen would say, you know what, I don't know, but I could go ahead and call a colleague who would know. Right. And so it's okay to be able to pass the baton to the next person and to say, I might not know that answer, but guess what? I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to ask someone else who might know. That's okay. And that in itself is enough to make a student feel empowered. And trust your students that if you plant that seed using this lesson plan, your students will be the ones who continue to water that seed. Once they become empowered, I can assure you that they're going to continue to advocate and do the research that they need to do in order to become more empowered on the topic of entrepreneurship. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Denea, for that. Right. I think that and we're really like grounding where this lesson plan is coming from, right? Entrepreneurship, as you all mentioned, can be like this really big and like unattainable and like so far away concept for many students. And so sometimes the work just starts with like helping normalize, demystifying it, that it is a way to thrive and not just a way to survive for undocumented students. And honestly, many people in this country could really just be the starting point. And I think that's what we were trying to accomplish with this lesson plan and that seed planting. We know that many of you all are already super committed and super like down for your students and everything. And so I think it's thinking about how to take that and like how to take this lesson plan to build and plant that seed of entrepreneurship. And just starting there at that point. And so I'm going to pass it over to Iliana to actually go and just like talk about more about this lesson plan that we keep alluding to at this point. And so Iliana, I'm also going to try to give you the screen control access.
And while you're doing that, can we all just give some love to Denea for that really powerful and inspiring talk?
Woohoo! Thank you.
Okay, Iliana, I actually noticed that my computer is saying it's not set up to do that yet, so I will stop sharing when we need to stop sharing, but I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Madeline. And let me see, I am getting a notification that says I'm controlling Madeline's screen.
Oh, okay. Can you try to see if you are able to do it?
It doesn't look like it. And it's okay. We can just stop sharing and I can share my screen. But thank you so much, Madeline, for this wonderful introduction. And Denea, always so inspirational and always just so wonderful to hear from you. And it's that kind of energy that is important when talking about entrepreneurship. Something else I want to mention is that really what we've been trying to do for many years now is to reclaim that entrepreneurship term. I feel like it's been co-opted by the tech industry. And I think that there's sort of this connotation that it's only people like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk that are entrepreneurs, when in fact, our community has been doing this as a way to not just survive, but thrive. And it's amazing to see all the experience that we have here as I'm reading the examples in the chat. So that's really sort of the energy and sort of the message that we want to give to students, that this isn't something new. This isn't something that they need to sort of have a lot of capital for, that they need to have a lot of information for. They can look at their own family members. They can look at their parents. They can look at their neighbors. And I'm sure that they're going to find those kind of examples for them to look at. So jumping into this entrepreneurship lesson plan. So the reason we put together this lesson plan is really to help meet the demand for workshops and presentations. So over the past few years, we have been putting together a lot of resources. We have done a few workshops, but up to a certain point there, it's really impossible to meet the demand and try to do the same workshop over and over. So one of the things that we thought would be helpful for educators specifically is to help you design your own workshop to inform your campus about basics about entrepreneurship. And so the objectives of this workshop is to introduce entrepreneurship as an opportunity to make money, just begin to brainstorm what kind of entrepreneurial skills, experience can be turned, how to leverage those skills and experience to be turned into income generation options, and provide more resources resources. And definitely we understand that entrepreneurship is vast, it's big, there's a lot to cover. One of the things that this lesson plan specifically, it's not intended to get into the weeds about entrepreneurship. Yes, I-10s are important, learning about business incorporation is important, licenses, etc. But what we're encouraging you all to do is to really, again, going back to Denea's planting the seed, we just want you to get the word out that these opportunities exist. And then somebody mentioned building the community, and then work with your local business school or work with your local SBDC, your local women's center that can then provide more of that technical information around I-10s, business incorporation. You do not have to be alone in doing this. Really, the idea is to just encourage students and help them understand that while employment may be a limitation, it may not be an option, there are other ways to be able to leverage their skills and whatever it is that they're learning at your respective college and university. Next slide, please.
Okay, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so you can pull it up.
Great. Let's see. So here I'm going to give you all a walkthrough, and of course you all should have the link. But once you get into the link, basically what you're going to see on this lesson plan, it's going to start off with an introduction. And on here, the way this was put together is that it's literally a step-by-step. We're going to give you the slides, the talking points, all of that is going to be on here. And in addition to this, we have lots of other resources that you can review. But at the very beginning, you will see here in terms of the instructions, the blue boxes, and you'll get to see exactly what that looks like, are literally exactly what you're going to say verbatim when you're putting together this document. Obviously, you can adapt it. You can adapt the slides. You can adapt this entire lesson plan to whatever you think is going to be most beneficial. We also put together for you some slides, and this is view only. So what you would do is you would actually make a copy for yourself, and then you can go in and make all of the edits that you need to make. You can add your own fonts, etc. So that's what you want to take a look at first. Then we do have our Spark website, which, by the way, is under construction at the moment. But generally, the Spark website is the place where you're going to go. Unfortunately, yes, it's under construction today, but that is going to be our entrepreneurship hub, where you can find more in-depth modules that you can refer your students to, more in-depth resources. Again, more additional resources that's not necessary for you to review, but particularly those of you that may be completely new to the concept of entrepreneurship, you may definitely want to take a look at some of these resources here to sort of ground yourself as to what this is all about. Again, there is no expectation for you to be an expert at all, but if you wanted to dive a little bit deeper into some of these concepts, we have many resources that you can jump into. We also recommend using the Jamboard. We really want this workshop that you're leading to be very interactive. Again, there's very little to share. It's really more about getting your students to think about, like, what does it look like to sort of transition into a contracting or a business opportunity. So now here we jump into the lesson plan. And so as you can see here, everything in the blue boxes is going to be exactly what you're going to say. And then from here, we go into different steps. Starts off with an icebreaker, and it's literally exactly some of the same questions that we asked today. Just questions around, does anyone have experience with entrepreneurship? And immediately, I think we've done this a few times. We've led many of these workshops. There is always somebody in the room that has the kind of experience, whether it's selling candy, whether it's selling chips. Someone always has that experience. So that's really always a good way to make those connections with entrepreneurship. So again, a lot of these exercises, a lot of these questions are just to get people to start talking about these options and continue to share example about what this UndocuHustle refers to, and really moving away from, again, this idea that entrepreneurship requires a lot of capital. It's only for certain people. It's only for certain majors. It's only for certain industries. Really, the idea is to try to get away from that and really normalize the concept and normalize the fact that literally any major, another thing that you can do is also literally any major that a student is majoring in, you can probably tie that to some type of contracting opportunity. Then there's a little bit more around this introduction of entrepreneurship, and we do have a lot of videos. So each one of these sections comes with a video that you can share and then engage in conversation around it. I won't show the video today, but this is sort of the way we've designed this. Then we get into actually helping students develop the entrepreneurship mindset. And this is one of the areas that we feel is also really important for you all as educators to encourage the students to do, to really just take the time. And this is very much a reflective exercise for the students to really think through, like, what do they enjoy doing? What are they learning in their classwork? Really just broadening all the different opportunities based on where the students are at is sort of the set of questions that you can offer. By the way, you can also split this up into multiple different workshops if you wanted to do 20 minutes, 30 minutes instead, and then you take your time with each of these workshops. This also is not intended to be a 1 hour, 2 hour. You can completely figure out sort of what makes the most sense for your students. And maybe step 4, this developing an entrepreneurship mindset, comes a little bit later, after you've had those conversations, after you've introduced some entrepreneurs. Then you can jump into this in session 3, for example, of the workshop that you're trying to lead. And this is pretty much how the lesson plan is designed. If you notice, there is nothing around ITINs, business structures, permits, licenses. That should be left to a much more sort of advanced workshop that may not necessarily be led by you. It could be led by somebody in the SBDC. You can invite somebody from your local VITA clinic to specifically talk about the ITIN. You can invite somebody from City Hall to talk about permits and licenses, just because all that information is a lot more technical. And honestly, a lot of the business permits and licenses are very specific to counties and cities. So you may actually want to work with local partners instead, so that students know exactly where to go once they're ready to get to those steps. The other last one, I think I mentioned, I'm trying to remember the stories. I know somebody,
I think it's down here, share instructions right here. Go through the stories of UndocuHustle video library.
yes. This one, I know that many of you mentioned that how do you find others? What are some good examples? So we put together for you stories of individuals. So this is a really easy way to look through our video library, and it's a different variety of individuals in different industries that you can read about. This is a great exercise to have your students look through this, and each one actually links to the video of the individual talking about their experience. And what's great about this is that really the message you want to deliver is that entrepreneurship exists across all industries. It looks very different. There is no sort of one way that everybody is pursuing entrepreneurship. It could be a combination of somebody is doing entrepreneurship related to their major. Somebody could be doing entrepreneurship based on a hobby. Somebody could be doing it based on just some great business opportunity that came their way. So that's what's important to help your students see, that it does look very different across the board. It also is in different majors. So it's not just sort of this STEM technology. For example, Bo is an artist and fashion designer. He has a clothing line that is very much focused on his identity as an artist. And then we have, for example, Cindy, also in fashion. So again, the idea is that pretty much anything that anybody can imagine can be turned into some type of opportunity to generate income. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Iliana. We did put the link on the lesson plan, which is available on our website, there on the chat for you to maybe more deeply go through after this session, but for you to kind of skim through right now. The link of stories that Iliana showed is in that lesson plan itself. I think it's on step number 2 There's a bunch of different links to go through. But again, as Iliana mentioned, right, and I think just some of the challenges when it comes to introducing entrepreneurship to people is how do you shift that mindset and plant the seed for folks? This is really what that workshop is intentionally going to do. And I see there's also a question about how many sessions to provide or to schedule for this workshop. I think the lesson plan is set up to be 1 hour, a 1 hour workshop. But again, as Iliana mentioned, if you want to spend more time, like just talking about or introducing entrepreneurship in the beginning or going through some of those stories, it could easily be broken up into multiple workshops. And so thank you, Iliana, for giving that really great overview. We'll take a pause right now, maybe to just get some like comments, reflections, questions from people about what they saw.
Hi, it's Catherine from Grossmont College. I think it's to be really transparent. It's sometimes it almost feels demoralizing to try to tackle like DACA and try to explain it and hold space and also kind of navigate like my own, kind of like as a practitioner, like my own stuff. So I'm sure you all hear it all the time, but it's just like a huge thank you to you all, like for putting together like the energy to put these containers together, because it really is helpful. Like I'm consistently having students go to Immigrants Rising, the resources page. This is going to be one of the other ones. So just, yeah, it's just like a huge shout out to you all.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
And if I can chime in, Catherine, I will say that, and many of us have this undocumented experience before DACA. I think that one of the things that I was sort of encouraged by when I heard about entrepreneurship is that it was the one thing I could do. So I grew up basically, and this was many years ago, I couldn't go to graduate school. I couldn't go to professional school. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do so many different things, but entrepreneurship was the one thing I didn't have to like think about my immigration status. I didn't have to think about my social security number. I didn't have to think about my work permit. And it was so liberating to finally have something that I could run free with, that I could find all sorts of different opportunities when my immigration status was not at the forefront and it was not the one thing I had to constantly think about.
Yeah, thank you, Iliana. And then I see Diane, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. This is really, really wonderful. What comes to mind is that one student I had she didn't have DACA, she didn't qualify, she's a dreamer, and she was really wanting to study engineering. And, she was working full-time at McDonald's and going through school, and I wish that I had this information because, we're not here to crush anybody's dreams. Go study what you want to study, but how can we at the same time, while you're so busy and you have so much on your plate, how can we really hope to shift this mindset for you, thinking beyond 5 years, 10 years. So this is really helpful. And I'm just even thinking as a counselor, how do we share this with the other counseling faculty, staff that make educational plans with students? Because dreamers don't always go to the Dream Center. They don't really want to. But then, at the end of their, their time at the college to transfer, they disclose, what am I going to do afterwards when I transfer? So this is really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Nancy, I think you had something to say.
Just quickly, thinking about the ideas, I'm really excited that we have a couple people from career centers here today. How can this lesson plan also be shared with career centers? And how could you also maybe let us know at Immigrants Rising, who are your career center people, so that we could reach out to them? So we're going to be hitting you up afterwards, and we'd love for you who are career center people here today to think about how could you help other career center people enter this space so that everybody knows that there's an opportunity for them at their school.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Diane, that you made too, right? How can we also spread this to other campus partners that we know our undocumented students are going to be connected with, if they're not connected with the Dream Center necessarily, to make sure that it's not just like one person, right, demystifying or normalizing entrepreneurship for them, but they hear it from multiple places, and it feels a little bit more real and more formed if it's coming from that too, and if it's a earlier conversation that they had. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and so with that, I know you all had like the lesson plan is still kind of marinating. You just saw it quickly today, and so I will actually transition us to just a breakout room for you all to kind of reflect and start thinking about already how you are actually going to be using this lesson plan on your campus. And so Nancy's working on putting us all in different breakout rooms right now. Don't leave yet. I know folks tend to jump off like when breakout rooms start, but this is also a chance to connect with other people in this room, right? To start maybe like picking folks' brains about different things that they want to do, or get ideas on how they can implement this lesson plan on their campus. And so we're going to go in breakout rooms right now. And then in this breakout room, you are given the scenario of being tasked with elevating entrepreneurship on your campus, right? And given what you have learned today about this lesson plan, and maybe think about what you also do on your campus, if you do something on your campus, how would you go about this? And think about how would you use this lesson plan? What campus community partners would you engage with? If applicable, what other resources would you use? And if at all, right, there could be some challenges that you come across when thinking about how to use this on your campus. Do you see any challenges in implementing this? And so we're gonna take maybe like about 11, 12 minutes or so to get on those breakout rooms. Nancy just put the questions in the chat. Let me also relink the lesson plan, so if you didn't grab that before. And then, yeah, any questions before we go into the other room? Okay, I don't see any, so I think we can transition into the breakout rooms. Okay. I think we still have a couple more rooms in the inside, who's still talking. Is this everybody? No, okay, it's still 23 seconds. I'll wait.
Okay, we can get started again.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I do hope you had a really, somebody's unmuted. You could keep yourself muted. I hear some echoes. Thank you. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a really good conversation, or at least like just a starting conversation with folks who were in your breakout room. Yeah, and I was wondering if I could hear from like 2 to 3 people on how their breakout rooms went. If you used the prompts, great. If you talked about something else around entrepreneurship, hopefully also good. And so can I get a couple of volunteers to share how it went for them in their breakout room? You can unmute, raise your hand, put it in the chat.
I forgot. Oh, okay, yeah. Arlene kind of encouraged me a little bit, just because I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the lesson plan, just because our program is new at BC, and I was just feeling like, oh, like, what if I give this lesson plan, or what if we give this as a workshop and we like get so many people excited, but like since we're so new, we're just trying to figure out like what does it take to be in entrepreneurship and all the logistical stuff that I know they're going to come back to ask me questions about that I don't know the answers to yet, like how to make an ITIN, like how do I patent my image that I'm going to sell on clothes and stuff like that. But Arlene just really reminded me that it's better that they have just to think that they have the opportunity and like start brainstorming, versus like we never get to tell them about it. And like I guess it would just be like a learning process for me to like having to try to help guide them if they are ready and stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Luz, for sharing that. Right. And thank you, Arlene, for the encouragement also. As we mentioned, right, some part of the hurdle is like many undocumented students don't believe entrepreneurship is for them, and it's this big foreign concept. And so how do we like start working on that first before already worrying about, you know, all the different logistical questions that do come with being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, which is all very valid. But how do we kind of use this lesson plan as a starting point and think about also maybe like what partners, both in our campus and our community, could we engage for some more of those logistical things, especially around ITIN and things like that moving forward. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, anybody else?
Can I piggyback off that?
Yeah,
So me and Luz work for the same college. And on top of that, I was thinking is, you know, I was expressing like, you know, this really got me thinking about who needs to be part of the different types of workshops or events that we're going to host, or however we decide to develop a program, but also stressing the importance of like the follow-up, right? Like you said, they're going to come back to me the way I do it. And like, if someone asks me to start a business, I'm going to have a series of questions. They're going to need the help across the way, step by step. And that, you know, to stress the urgency, it can't just be a single workshop and then you check the boxes, put in our program plan to say that we did it and supported it. But what kind of support comes after, and how is it consistent throughout the process of a student continue to start their business and be successful at it in different stages of that business as it goes through.
Yeah. And I think that's also something we'd want to hear from you all. How for folks who are like learning how to navigate that and like connecting with different partners on campus or off campus, like what are some of the best practices or promising practices around that to share with our, you know, with this group and even just our bigger higher education like listserv to better guide students through entrepreneurship. Yeah. Gio, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just, in response to that question, so for Mount SAC, we are looking to partner with the Dream.us. They have a specific partnership with Career Launch. Wait, let me actually get you the actual name. It is called the Career Leadership Collective. And so what they're doing is they are offering a series of workshops throughout, I would say like from what I understand, it's either 4 or 5 weeks together. And what we are planning on doing at least is having a cohort of students go through this program, like 20 to 25 students. And by the end of this program, my understanding is that students walk away with knowing what they need to know about the ITIN for those that don't have one, but also have a clear vision of how to launch their business or what they would want to do. And so a lot of students are really looking forward to this program. So maybe that's something that for those of you that have funds through the community colleges, from the funds that were released, that's possibly something that, you know, you could bring into your students as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Gia, for sharing that. Feel free to also put that in the chat if for folks to check out later. Nancy?
Yeah, just wanting to address what some of the people were, you know, talking about from Bakersfield, and then also with Gio. I do think that there are many questions that people are going to come back for, but I also think that it's really important that we don't wait until we know everything, and that we don't wait until we have a full structure built within our school to start talking to our students about this, because this can really bring a lot of concerns for people. You know, like, I need to know this, I need to know these other pieces. And mientras tanto, in the meantime, students are missing out on their ability to be able to think about what's going on. And like Denea said, there are already so many resources within Immigrants Rising with the Spark website, you know, just spending some time talking about the opportunities that are available, that I think I really just want to encourage people, if you're connected with the Dream.us, yay, you know, if you already have a big program that you can do, great. But really just starting with that entrepreneurial mindset, helping people connect to the idea that an entrepreneurial is just being a hustle, you know, getting a little UndocuHustle on, which they might have already done. That feels like what we really want to make sure that you walk, or that I'm really committed to making sure that you walk away with today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. I think that's actually a really good point to kind of like transition us to just some next steps. that Iliana will actually share, like, or some suggested next steps to move forward, in addition to kind of thinking about how to use this lesson plan or incorporate this lesson plan in your entrepreneurship efforts at your campus. So I can pull up my screen again and then pass it over to Iliana to share these.
Great. Thank you so much, Madeline. So just a few notes here in terms of how to move forward with the lesson plan. I think we've stated this a few times, but you definitely do not have to be the expert on any one of these topics. And I understand that, you may get those complicated questions, but I think that, and I will share a really great resource where you can identify local partners. Really, the intention with the lesson plan is just to plant the seed. And then, like Denea mentioned, let the students sort of guide where else do you need to go and just really work with them to look for those answers. So really, and again, I will say that entrepreneurship is going to look very different. So even for us, I still get requests from students who are wanting to pursue nursing as a contracting opportunity. Nowhere near my field. I have no clue, but I do know somebody that could potentially help me figure something that can help me figure that out. That's going to look very different from somebody who wants to start their own law firm. That's going to look very different for somebody in the fashion industry. So it is something that you're going to have to constantly sort of be doing the research for, and just really helping individuals just point them in the right direction rather than you knowing all the answers to every single field or every single industry. Another thing is that we are planning to hold a few train the trainer workshops that you can join. And these are going to be opportunities where we will go through the lesson plan again and have more of a hands-on workshop where we can help you figure out exactly what is needed at your campus. It's what's going to be best for you. And we are going to have sort of a menu of options up on our website. And as soon as that's ready, we're going to make sure to send that over to you all. Another thing that we encourage you all to do is to invite local immigrant entrepreneurs. So there are entrepreneurs everywhere across the nation. We are working on a directory where you can find local individuals to invite to your campus to have panel conversations or to have them share their story. We've talked about partnerships with local entrepreneurship, community-based organizations, or your business school. Put on here this really great website, venturize.org. This is a directory that's nationwide. You can put in your zip code and you're going to get basically every single organization that supports entrepreneurs that is near you. So that's for sort of all the entrepreneurship, scaling, how to grow a business. Another great place that I didn't add on there, but I can definitely add on the slides would be the VITA clinics. So I definitely recommend, especially for questions around the ITIN. It is not easy to get. I do not encourage anybody to even try to apply on their own. It really does require working with a certified acceptance agent, with a tax professional. So it is definitely not something that you need to feel that you have to do. I would recommend instead, again, partnering with your local VITA clinic, find where your local IRS office is, because it's going to be challenging, and it honestly does require just working with somebody who understands how to work with somebody who is undocumented. And then just lastly, just connecting with other institutions. So working with your colleagues and your peers that are part of this conversation to get more ideas, to really figure out what other people are doing, what other models are working. Just like Giovanni shared that great partnership with the dream.us. This is really how we're able to increase our capacity, is with you all helping us brainstorm some additional ideas to uplift entrepreneurship. And with that, we'd love to hear some other ideas or any other questions that you all may have. And let's see, I'm reading some questions here. Cynthia, you want to let, so we can connect with each other to learn about.
Yeah, I think we can figure out a way to like share who has attended these different spaces and contact information for folks so you can connect also beyond this space. And I should have mentioned earlier too, but always encourage folks, especially if you're in breakout rooms, to share contact information there too if somebody says something really great in those spaces. And then I see, Miriam, you have a I think this is about the fellowships now, right? At some point, I thought financial aid offices at colleges could be an accepting entity. Our college does not. So I won't touch that yet, but Miriam, we can follow up with you on that specific question. Oh, it was about the ITINs. Okay. At some point, I thought financial aid offices at colleges could be an accepting entity about ITINs. That's not true, right? Yeah.
No, that definitely again requires contacting the local VITA clinic or the local tax acceptance agent.
Right. Okay. And then I just see this like appreciation from Diane about, I love that we don't have to do or create any of this alone. We can work with others on campus collaborations to provide the service, work experience, career services, or counselors as some potential partners. Yeah, thank you so much, Diane. And then I think we just have a clarification about a VITA clinic, and we can put the link to that in this slides for folks to look at later. But Iliana, do you want to just clarify that really quick before we move forward?
Yeah, so VITA clinics are basically sort of organizations that provide free tax support, and it's typically those organizations that could also help individuals apply for the ITIN.
Yeah, thank you, Iliana. Okay, I think with that too, we did have a lot of ideas, hopefully, or just some brainstorm going in the breakout room. So if you are still thinking about the different ways you can take this lesson plan and elevate entrepreneurship more on your campus, feel free to share that with us after this meeting. We do want to, just to transition us to the next slide, we do want to know how today's session was helpful for you. And so I'm going to ask folks again to go to mentee.com and put in the same code from before, 17152699, and just rate if you agree with these statements. I won't show up on the screen again, just so it can be anonymous. And there is an option there to say, if you would be interested in getting more support on how to use this lesson plan specifically on your campus. And we'll be in touch with folks too about some of those train the trainer workshops that Iliana mentioned, and just other support around entrepreneurship in general that I know the entrepreneurship team at Immigrants Rising is super hard at work in. So I'm going to give folks a couple of minutes to do that, a couple of minutes to do this Mentimeter. Let me also just stop sharing my screen to make sure that that is open. But if you're having trouble, let me know in the chat too. Sorry. Okay. Could you try it again? I see the original question pops up. Okay, I think I see that it's working for folks, hopefully, right? Great, okay, I'll just give a couple more seconds before we officially close the space. Okay. I see we have 16 respondents. I'll wait a couple more seconds again. There's 29 people in this room. Really encourage you all to fill it out. Okay. Great. Okay. So I think we just hit 20 respondents right now. I won't show the screen necessarily, but I do see some interest. I do see a lot of interest about getting more support on how to use this lesson plan. So we will be in touch about future opportunities for those. But in the meantime, please take this lesson plan, go through it more deeply yourself today, and share it with folks who could be who are campus partners, or who we had already mentioned today as potential allies in kind of elevating entrepreneurship for your students on your campus. And so I'm just going to start closing out this space. Also want to share the contact information of everybody who participated today. So let me just pull that up. And I do want to make a quick announcement. As I mentioned, we do host these Promising Practices Roundtable every month, but we will be taking a break for December to assess, reorganize, and to start planning already for our next sessions in the new year, because the year is going by so fast. But these do take place every second Thursday of every month. We're keeping that schedule in the new semester. And in January 12, 2023, we're actually going to be talking about AB 469, which is that new law around high school seniors needing to complete a financial aid application, either FAFSA or California DREAM Act, during their senior year. And so we want to kind of talk to you all about how to engage high school seniors early through feeder schools or other relationships that you have to make sure that they are completing the California DREAM Act. And so the registration is not up here yet, but we will share it with folks who have registered today, and just through our normal listserv. If you're not part of that, please get in touch with me. But here is just everybody's contact information. And again, a link to the lesson plan for you all to dig more deeply after this meeting. Please be in touch, especially if you do try out the lesson plan in your campus. We want to hear about it.